Warning, this podcast may contain reference to abuse of a physical, verbal, or sexual nature. This podcast may also include opinions that people do not agree with. Thank you for listening.
Yes, episode 6 rerun, although you'll never hear the first version. First of all, I would like to apologize for no episode 6 last week. Thanks to, being in hospital, I've got an issue called EDS that basically causes my joints to regularly dislocate. And there were possible complications and whatnot that meant that I had to skip recording day for a hospital trip.
Fun times.
Indeed. But I'm back, and we are back to our regularly deregulated schedule, ? So yes, today, and I feel like it's a very fitting one, since I'm still recovering from the hospital, fatigue.
Yeah, just... I think I was feeling it more a couple of days ago. It just slammed into me like a freight train, just how exhausted I had been through all of this, like through activism, through just trying to be a decent person, which it should be easy. And then all you hear now is just the consistent badness of what's going on. So, like, the UK government just being a shit can by itself. Like, words need not be said.
David Cameron has returned with more bullshit.
I know. The fact that he received, as an advisor, 10 million in an advisory role, like...
I would like 10 million just to sit there and go, you're wrong, I don't know why, but you're wrong.
Basically, I think we'd be set for life.
Fuck yeah.
And then now, and a contentious point is what's happening in Afghanistan at this point. It just feels like it is one thing after another. It's like... They may as well have just called this 2020. Like, it's just, 2020 has just run in.
2020, part 2.
Basically.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said with the Afghan thing, I think that's an interesting one because I feel like there's a big divide in the way that people see it depending on generation. Because like when millennials and especially Gen Z look at it, this is a war that's been going on all of our life.
2 decades.
Yeah, like this is a war that I don't know what it's like for this war to not exist. It has gone on that long. Much like the financial crisis. So it's really difficult in a way because I don't understand how like older generations and that feel about it. For me, it's like you said, fatigue. Like I've heard about the Afghan War going on my entire life. I don't know a world without the Afghan War. And now President Biden has pulled American troops out. And I can honestly, as someone that's been watching and like ever since I was a kid, it's, we're sending troops in so that they can fight. Okay, how much progress have they made? None. It's like it's been 20 years. How have we not done anything? Why is this country not free yet? And it's been that constantly. And so now Biden's pulled out. And I personally can see where he's coming from with that idea of why are we sending generation upon generation of soldiers to die for a war that is making no progress? And to further the point, the second that Biden pulled out, the president of Afghanistan ran away. Yeah. Like, that proves the point that, in a way, there's no point in sending any more soldiers or that, because they're not fighting a war, they're just trying to hold back, like, they're just trying to stop horrible people from overtaking a country that's leaders want the bad guy to win. It seems kind of pointless to fight for someone who just doesn't want to fight.
Like, when I was young and I first heard about this, like, this all happened after 9/11. Like, I had 5 years on Earth of comparative peace. I was in primary school, so I knew nothing about it. But then 9/11 happened, and the world changed irrevocably. And suddenly, the war on terror began. And then you had the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Which Prime Minister Tony Blair had taken Britain into, basically skipping down the merry lane into hell with George Bush.
Yay.
And essentially, and it has been discovered, and it's been known for a while now, that Britain was taken into that war under false pretenses.
I mean, at this point, I feel like the British government's MO is false pretense between Iraq, Brexit, there's a lot of interesting.
And do correct me if I'm wrong, Tony Blair was Labour.
Yeah.
This man who says that he is Catholic and follows the Catholic scriptures, essentially is responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of innocents, including his own soldiers. But apparently that is fine. But we all know Blair, if the Catholic faith is correct, we all know he quite likely, because of the lies and because of the deaths, he is going to have a very, very toasty spot in hell.
Well, I hope so. Kind of just pitchfork balls repeatedly. Oh, no, little Nicky, just pineapple right up the ass.
Oh, ouch.
Spikes first. It's insane, because I know that a lot of people, it's irritating because, again, I don't know a world without this war.
No, neither do I.
I don't remember a world where, don't get me wrong, I fucking hate the Tories. They are horrible. But I don't know a world where Labour can be trusted.
I don't know a world in which any government or any party in Britain can be trusted.
Yeah, it's a really difficult thing. It's like you said, it's exhausting, it's fatiguing. We go out there, we protest for things like Black Lives Matter, better environment, X, Y, Z, next thing. I mean, back in the 80s, you had, the Flower Power movement against Vietnam.
That was the 60s.
60s, thank you.
80s was an interesting time. That's when ACT UP and Gay Men's Health Crisis came about. The AIDS epidemic came about, and there were people protesting and stuff like that. And they had a reason to protest. And the generations before us then suddenly told us before the financial crisis that we could follow our dreams, that fulfillment was the most important thing in our lives, and that money wasn't the be-all and end-all. Money was never going to be the important thing. It was your fulfillment that meant the most. And the moment the financial crisis comes about, the older generations just turned their backs on us.
Yeah.
And they suddenly thought, that your dream should now become a hobby, or that you should be grateful to have a job. And so they filled us up with all these lies. They filled us up with all these hopes and aspirations, only to dash them, turn their backs on us, and then say, we never said any of that. It's the worst kind of gaslighting I've ever experienced. And it hurts, because we as a generation, and the generations that follow, we've experienced the brunt of 3 financial crashes that we know, and it's probably going to keep happening. We've experienced now a global pandemic on the scale that we've never seen before, that has essentially halted life as we know it.
Yeah, we haven't seen this for at least 100 years.
No, not even Spanish flu, but even then, 3 years, and it kills off about 3% of the world. And now it's we are just patting each other on the back, especially the Tory government, patting itself on the back for its vaccine rollout, which in itself, yes, it's a good thing. However, your vaccine rollout against a death toll of about nearly 135,000 is it's not a good thing. To match up one good thing with a myriad of bad things, it's not good enough.
My an example that I can think of would be currently the Tory government are doing the equivalent of cheering themselves and giving themselves a medal for running a marathon and winning that marathon only because they managed to run over everyone else in a car.
Basically.
That's what they're doing. It's all the other runners are dead, but we did a good thing. And it's no.
It just reminds me of that cartoon sketch, I think it's Family Guy, where Peter Griffin's just got in his car and he's mowing over everyone to get to the finish line.
That's what
literally
doing.
what it's doing. And quite recently we had in Britain an attack in Plymouth.
Yeah.
Which government and our
Security
our
office.
security office, like domestic intelligence, MI5, is not calling it domestic terrorism.
Which I think is insane, because the criteria to count terrorism is an attack done to instill fear or is moved by belief or hatred of a specific demographic. This was your clear kind of, school shooter sort of a character. Motivation was a hate of women.
Yeah,
That's terrorism.
He hated women because he couldn't get laid.
Yeah, which I think is so dumb.
I know, and it's the fact of the police had removed his firearm to only give it back to him last month, and then he carries out this attack, and it
In my opinion,
it's injured people. It's killed a family. The youngest person in that attack was a 5-year-old.
He also killed his own mother.
Yeah.
So
And it staggers me completely that a man then went on to Twitter to then tell the women of Plymouth to take some form of responsibility for the attack.
it's not their job to take responsibility
No.
for an idiot with a gun.
Yeah, I'm sorry, women, no one owes you anything. A woman does not owe a man anything. She does not owe a man affection. She does not owe him love. She does not owe him sex at all,
way.
in any shape or form.
Yeah.
If it's a consenting relationship, if you are affectionate with one another, go ahead. But you do not owe your partner or anyone anything.
Exactly. It's it's your body. You get to choose how or when you do whatever with it.
Exactly.
Like you can love whoever you want. You can have sex with whoever you want. If it's for affection, if it's for money, because sex work is real work.
Exactly.
That's your choice. And if you don't want to have it, that's your choice. You don't need any reason. Like, if you just say no, then that's it. And no one, absolutely no one in the world has any right to turn around and be like, well, if you had just pooed out, this would never have happened. No, this would have happened either way. You just want someone to fucking blame other than yourself, you twat.
Exactly. It's like it just perpetuates that rape culture.
It really
of like
does.
this toxic culture that women owe men something because a man can look upon a woman or anyone with desire and think he has a right to them. And it doesn't work that way. It never works that way. But then again, that is how men have gained power, because they think they own it.
Yeah.
They think it belongs to them. They take it, and when there is resistance, that's when the violence comes in.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's a very male thing to do, is it doesn't go your way, get violent, and then it
Exactly.
will. Like, I, as someone who, spent a lot of time in, like, bar brawls and that, I know that strategy. Like, I've lived it. It's, if it doesn't go your way, if people don't do what you want, hit them enough, they'll do it eventually.
Basically. And it's the fact of, to categorize this guy, both by government and by MI5, to then not say that this was not a terror attack, I'm sorry, but that's complete bullshit, because we have witnessed so many terror attacks.
Of
all kinds. We witnessed 9/11. We witnessed the 7/11 bombings. We witnessed Charlie Hebdo. We witnessed all the other attacks that had happened in Paris,
Germany,
in
Manchester.
Nice. And then we had Manchester, and then we had the Christmas market in Germany. We had all of this, but only because this white man who was an incel, and they expect us to feel pity for him because he couldn't get laid. It's mind-boggling.
Don't be a prick and you'll get laid.
It is terrorism. It is full-blown terrorism. Say what it is. Call it by its name. Stop being a pussy about it.
Yeah. I think it's such a dumb thing as well, of the idea of, oh, well, if he got laid, it wouldn't have been a problem. I have been asked quite a lot, because, I mean, as you know, back, when I was younger, I'm still pretty much a kid. But, like, when I was younger, I was a bit of a, I don't know what the term is these days, like, when I was a kid, the equivalent was a dog or a player or whatever kind of thing, but I never played or that, but it was how, like,
You're a bit of a scoundrel.
yeah, and it was, how did you, like, how did you get so many girls in that? What was your plan? And it was one of, I didn't have one. I didn't go into a bar and order a drink for myself and start chatting to someone being like, I'm definitely, like, one way or another, I'm getting her home. I was just chatting, and if one thing led to another, one thing led to another, and woohoo, consenting adults. But, like, so, yeah, nobody, like, the idea of, oh, it's because he couldn't get laid that he... No fucking excuse. If he wasn't walking around expecting to get laid just for his existence, he wouldn't have these problems in the first fucking place because he'd have a fucking life.
It's just...
Ooh, the rage.
I know, it's just incredulous. And I'm sorry, but this is the exact reason why everyone, the queer community, women, any form of minority, it's why they hate men.
Yeah.
It's like, because...
I'm a guy and I hate guys.
Oh God, yeah, I'm
Probably why I'm not bi.
I'm gay and I hate men. And this is the irony. I hate it so much.
You love the D, but you can't stand the dude.
No, absolutely not. It's just mind-boggling that a fact of you can excuse a man, but then, like, say if a man rapes someone, if a teenager rapes someone, and all they'll get is, oh, boys will be boys. Like, look at Brock Turner. The reason why he didn't get a full sentence was because they thought it would harm his athletic career. I'm sorry, he raped someone. He raped someone behind a dumpster. He was put in jail. He was only given 6 months. 6 months. I'm sorry, but no. If you rape someone, you get the full arm of the law because you have done something monstrous. And I find it incredulous also that in places like Alabama, especially, that the punishment for abortion is more severe than the punishment for rape.
Which tells you an awful lot about the people in charge,
Exactly.
in my opinion. It's disgusting.
It is.
Like, when I went to school, me and my old friend, like, we were in the same class together. And me and him were, like, I mean, geeks. Like, we play D&D, card
Absolute
games,
nerds.
Beyblades, that whole kind of thing back in high school. Like, we were total fucking nerds.
Absolute nerds.
And I remember, like, all of the like, like, British equivalent of jocks, because we don't get jocks over here, we get idiots. But the equivalent, like I remember all the sporty kids and that always, you guys are gonna end up being rapists or molesters, just because me and him, like, loved playing chess at lunch instead, kind of thing, or loved Dungeons and Dragons and storybooks. And it was, you're gonna end up raping someone when you grow up. Hilariously, 3 of them all went off to be athletes, footballers and that of different types. Every single one of them charged with assaulting a minor. And I find it ironic how people are like, oh no, you need to protect their big athletic career or their movie career or whatnot. No, you should not be protecting people no matter how fucking rich or how popular they are. If they have done something horrible, they need to be tried and they need to be punished if found guilty.
It just brings up, like, and it just brings back the Harvey Weinstein case.
Oh.
Like, he affected and harassed and assaulted so many women. And it's insane to even think that was happening. And people knew it was happening. They just wouldn't do anything about it.
Blizzard as well. Yeah. Like Activision Blizzard at the moment with its, the state of California suing it for... seriously, I mean, if there is any example of why the gaming industry has such a bad rep for people on it, it's because of the rich assholes that are in charge of it that actually aren't gamers, that seem to let this kind of horrific shit ferment. And I don't know what it is, but people just seem to get money, especially bad people seem to get money, and they seem to think they're untouchable, and we need to change that narrative. We need to change the narrative. Like, women should be allowed to wear whatever they damn well like, whether as revealing or unrevealing as they like, and not be blamed for a guy being a twat about it.
Yeah, basically, boys, listen up. You are responsible for your own arousal. Like, it was just insane. Like, I can't remember where it was. I think it was in one of the Scandinavian countries. I might even have been here, where girls were told to not wear any form of revealing clothes, which is, I mean, they're wearing a school uniform.
How revealing
but things
can you
like, but like short skirts that, like, they hug the body, so you're not seeing anything.
No, yeah.
Like,
I mean, pencil skirts aren't exactly the most,
they're
frivolous of skirts.
No, they're not mobile. You don't see anything. But then it was a case of they were told not to wear such skirts because for fear it would distract both the boys and the teachers. And I'm sat there just going like, I'm sorry. You are essentially terrified that you're going to pop a boner over a child. That is gross. How about not hiring predators?
Yeah. And I mean, even if they've got a psychological issue or that, it's their job to manage their own issue.
Exactly.
Like, as a dude that's got lifelong psychosis and that, I can sit here and say that, yeah, like, I have to manage my own mental health fucking issue. Mm-hmm. Why do assholes and rapists not have to manage their mental issue, huh?
I know.
And it's absolutely, it's disgusting that women have to mitigate men's issues, and it's disgusting that we're raised with this idea that that's how it should be, and that that's okay. Like, men, you're entitled to find a woman good looking, or a guy, or whatever you're into, or, be attracted. You do not have a right to act on that attraction. That is the difference. We're not saying that you're not allowed to be like, say, in my case, a cute goth girl walks down the street with, like, thigh-high boots.
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, oh, okay. I'm not going to run up to her and grope her. I'm just going to be like, I like this. And move on with my existence.
Yeah, literally, like, when I was in town today, I was talking with a friend, and we were just having a chat, and then we were like, oh, hunk ahoy. And it's like, because he was very good looking. But at the same time, when I was young, when I was in high school, I was around so many good looking guys. I had to control myself.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I was responsible for my own arousal. I had to be able to control myself, which I did. And I'm sat there just going like, nope, I'm just going to get changed. I'm not going to look at anyone. And once I'm changed, I'm going to leave. I'm just going to get ready. Because obviously that was a time where to pop a boner in the middle of a boys' changing room is probably the worst thing that happened. You would have the piss ripped out of you.
Yeah.
It's like it's your typical American gay kid sort of thing, and it's just like, please no. So that was my worst fear, that people would be like, yes, I find these guys very attractive, they are sexually attractive. Like, I was like 16, 17. And these guys were bulky, and I'm sat there just going like, I hate this, I hate my life. Because they were all straight, they were all jocks, and then there were some nerds who were like very good looking. But it was just like, oh God, you're welcome. Very good looking you are. But it was a case of, no, I had to be able to control myself. But if a jock or anyone else cannot control his urges, he is a danger to the people around him. He is a danger to almost anyone. And it was proved that because this man could not get laid, he was a member of the Incell community, and they are insane enough as it is.
Yes. For anyone that doesn't know what the Incell community is, which, I mean, I'm pretty sure that, if you're, if you're part of the internet, you probably know what it is. But just in case, it's a community of where toxic masculinity basically runs rampant due to...
It's involuntary celibacy.
Yeah, and it's the idea of they feel like it's women's fault that they can't get laid, and that it's their right, and that women are the problem. And unfortunately, like, not everyone starts that way in the incel community. Like, some people will, like, have a really, really bad experience. Like, I don't know, they'll get cheated on or something, so they'll look for some other people that have been cheated on to, like, talk to and be like, that wasn't fair. That kind of, like, almost reassurance of, was the fact I was cheated on wrong. And then the rabbit hole appears. And you dive down and you start blaming women for your inability in everything. And it can be really, really bad. I mean, like, I've like, when I was cheated on and that, like, I've seen people around me and that end up in that kind of situation, and, like, almost try and lean me towards that. I cut contact with them and that, but lean me towards the, oh yeah, it's all women's problem. It's like, well, no, if I want to get laid, I'm pretty sure that, that's okay if I want to get laid. I'm not entitled to it.
No.
And I'm not gonna go kill people for it.
No. it's mind-boggling. It really is. And just, I can't even imagine what it's like in Plymouth right now, where it's shattered a community. It's completely shattered them. And they're having to pick up the pieces, and then Priti Patel went down there.
Oh, no.
To like, pay her condolences, and I'm sat there just going, like, you think this is a good gesture. It's really not.
Gesture politics.
It's just like, how dare you show your face here when this is part of the problem? Like, you may think it's a good thing, but at that same time it's just like, well, no, it's really not a good thing.
You shouldn't be going and putting flowers on a grave. You should be in the fucking House of Commons demanding reform. That's what you should be doing. You should not be sitting there being like, oh, this will make me look like I care about my people. Fighting for your people will show you this. Like, if you're, in my opinion, if you're willing to be pissed off that people have pulled out of Afghanistan because we're letting innocent people die, then you should be pissed off that your own government won't stand up for you because innocent people are dying here. Mm-hmm. If your own government won't put laws in to protect their people, then what the hell are they expected to do?
Oh, she can't even put in laws to protect her own people, because she is the reason why the protest bill went through.
Yep.
When a group of women went to protest the murder of Sarah Everard, who was murdered by a police officer and an accomplice.
Which is disgusting, because if you're a police officer, it is your, not even just legal obligation, it is your moral obligation to protect people, not to hurt.
And do you know what stings even more? So the man who murdered Sarah Everard is no longer a police officer, so he won't be tried as a police officer who has murdered.
He should still, because it was committed while he was a police officer.
Exactly.
It's like you said, it's that fatigue. It doesn't matter how much, and again, it's like you were saying before we started recording, of like, we're here, and barring last week, every single week recording and saying our opinions and ranting and kind of trying to express our distaste and the idea that, you know, if we're able to scream over a microphone or draw some pictures, write a song, write a book, that we'll be able to change the world. And little by little, I'm sure that we can. But at the same time, I'm not going to lie and say that it'll be easy. We are exhausted. As not even just out of the two of us or even just our listeners. As a generation, we have been lied to. We have been oppressed. We have been put down. And generations of minorities and LGBT people before have been the same. They have all been put down and they have all been oppressed. And honestly, it's really, really exhausting that we have to repeat the same message over and over of,
be a decent human being, for goodness sake.
like, yeah, Jesus Christ. Like, it is not the job of, like, for instance, with this whole incel thing, it is not the job of women to make sure that men don't get aroused. It's the job of men to understand that they're aroused and not fucking being an asshole about it. I mean, a prime example of this issue, and it really affected a culture at one point, was when missionaries initially went over to Japan. And it used to be commonplace because Japan has very much the same kind of weather as Scotland has, where it's really cold winters but really warm summers. And what they used to do is in the paddies and that, where they like get rice and like whatever they're farming at the time, beets or whatever. It was very common for you to take your top off, like for you, or more accurately, to drop your yukata and haori, which were the clothes. And male or women would do that because it's fucking hot.
It's boiling.
Especially working the fields all day, so you just go without a top. It was much easier. And then missionaries came over and was like, oh no, you can't do that because us Christian good men can't not rape you if you don't have a top. And it's like, no, that's your problem. You're the one that's decided that, no, you know what? I'm going to forsake my own religion to rape you because I feel like I'm better than you because my skin is paler. Which is disgusting.
I mean, I think it was like medieval Japan was like far more liberal in a lot of ways, because they had absolutely no idea of the Judeo-Christian ethic. Well, I say ethic in quotes.
Yeah, we're going back like, like Muramasa kind of like ancient times here. But then the Judeo-Christian kind of beliefs came along and opened up Japan to the world and that. And they wonder why they closed their borders for like 200 years. And then the next time they opened their borders, they decided to invade China and Korea and start a war with America. Maybe because, we taught them that that's how the world works.
We taught them imperialism.
Yeah, and so they took imperialism, and they did it. I mean, they already had imperialism before that, but we taught them toxic imperialism. And I mean, it's a really harsh thing as well, actually, at the moment. Speaking of culture and wiping out and that, like, I very much, lean into Japanese culture and understand it, and our wonderful editor, is very much with Japanese and all that, that kind of culture. And it's really hard to watch a lot of, at the moment with Tokyo 2020 Olympics happening, 21, but yep, 2020 Olympics. It is 2020 part 2, you're right. With all that happening, it's really sad to actually watch the, Japanese culture, we're watching it disintegrate at the moment, because there are some very, very key points to the culture that, honestly, I would hate to see die, and I know that a lot of people would hate to see die, because, there was a wonderful little thing going on when the Olympics started, which was to redesign the flags as samurai. However, that was a rewrite of the original plan. The original plan was to turn the flags into yukata and haori, and make traditional kimono outfits for people that looked like the flags. And the idea was to inspire people to take up this ancient art, because it is an art that it's not taught through books. It is an orally given art. Once the last few kimono and yukata makers die, the art is dead. It's like in Scotland. There is one targe maker left in Scotland. When he dies, targe making dies forever. And it's horrible watching ancient and beautiful cultures fall apart due to a mix between imperialism, colonialism, and modernity. The idea that if it doesn't fit with the narrative of the current way of the world or the current government, that it should be eradicated. I feel like that's really, really, again, that's probably adding to our fatigue, is I've been reading up a lot of, I've always been a man who loves myths and legends and all that kind of thing, but I've been reading up how storytelling works, and how America is in a very unique position with storytelling. Because they're a very, very, I know this is going to be a sore point for some people, you are a very young country. You are a baby country. You are still only crawling out of the fetus stage. But it's reaching the point where other countries' folk heroes began to appear. You had people like Robin Hood, Gilgamesh, King Arthur, all Cuchulainn, Boudica, they all started around this time that America's just hit. And it's really interesting to watch no folk heroes appear. Because...
And if there were folk heroes, they're not white. They're if they are folk heroes, they are Native American.
Yeah, and that's the point. Is even Native Americans have a culture in that is rich with myths, legends, folk heroes. But America, modern America, made by Spanish and British colonialism, doesn't have, they've got Johnny Appleseed and that, but they're not real people.
No.
A lot of folk heroes were based off of real people that did such things that they became legends. They weren't legends that people wished were people. Even Vlad the Impaler is a folk hero in some terms. He was a real person. He just kind of became a myth. Because of what he did. And America, I feel like it's interesting because the modern world won't ever, because the way the modern world works, that kind of thing can't happen. Everything has to be rationalized and have a purpose. There can't be randomness for the sake of randomness anymore.
No. See, I also find it interesting, still on the topic of storytelling, I also find that there's been a reversion in Britain with this method of storytelling. So Britain, as we all know, is home to the grandfather of fantasy. It's the home of J.R.R. Tolkien, who is famous for The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, The Silmarillion, and The Children of Húrin, among other things.
He is the grandfather of high fantasy.
He is. But then, at the same time, say the 50s, 60s, in America, so this is when fantasy is now looked down on in America in the 60s and stuff like that. We had Lloyd Alexander coming out with The Chronicles of Prydain, which was a Newbery Medal Award winner. The last book won the Newbery Award. I believe also The Black Cauldron was a runner-up for the Newbery.
I forgot that was about that time.
And then later on in the decade, we've got Wizard of Earthsea, Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea cycle, which is fantastic in itself. But now Britain has sort of seemed to think it's outgrown its fantastical side of things. And it also it strikes me also because England more than most has no mythology or folklore to speak of, whereas Scotland, Wales and Ireland all have their legends, they have their folklore. Like Ireland and Scotland, we share folklore because our nations are Celtic.
Well, even pre-Celtic speaking,
it's like
Scotland has its own thing.
Like Rhiannon. I think she was the goddess of the moon, I want to say.
Like that. The Morrigan, the goddess of death.
Yeah, like we have this. England doesn't have it, but now it's like, oh, we've got Lord of the Rings. We're going to outgrow this, but now it's far more acceptable to have high fantasy in America because fantasy will thrive in America because you've had writers like Neil Gaiman, you've had Ursula Le Guin, you've had Lloyd Alexander, you've got Tolkien, you've got all these things. But whereas with British fantasy, you've only got Tolkien, who's like the only one people properly know. When you've got like in his shadow, you've got like C.S. Lewis, Philip Pullman, Alan Garner with his like I want to see like the Weird Stone of Brisingamen, something like that. It's a great series, but he's also like the Owl Service and stuff like that, famous ones. But no, America is more easy to kindle when it comes to fantasy because Le Guin actually wrote an essay, I believe it was in the 70s, going, why do Americans hate dragons? But now it's completely changed. But I think it's more a time of when she started writing things like Earthsea, The Left Hand of Darkness, The Dispossessed and stuff like that. America was very different. It was the era of social realism. It was the era of writing true stories, like real stories, which is really weird in a lot of ways because fantasy is born out of realism. Like I said like it was read in a previous episode, writing and fiction is an escape into the truth and not from it. And through fantasy, you could easily talk about truth. You could talk about the big questions. Britain is sort of not doing that. Britain is failing to do that. And I think the only time we can ever see British writers taking on these hard topics properly is actually in its children's fiction. So things like His Dark Materials and The Book of Dust by Philip Pullman.
I forgot that's a children's fiction.
It is. It is. It's young. It's children's young adult.
It's so well done, though.
It really is. And the TV show that they've done for it, that the BBC and HBO have done.
Well done.
Wow. Like, thank you to whoever did that. Thank you for making that amazing. We cannot wait for season 3. But honestly, like things like that, it tackles important issues. It tackles religion, toxic religion in a lot of ways. Because the magisterium in His Dark Materials, it's a fascist idea. It controls everything. It's looking at everything.
It's religion gone insane or gone too far.
Exactly. And
you bring up an interesting point that Britain has become adverse to fantasy in the fantastical that we know with dragons and gods as in multi-pantheon gods, not as in the Christian God, which for some reason we're still more likely to. I don't know. Britain's confusing. But like kind of dragons and fae and whatnot are like no one's willing to believe in those anymore.
No.
However, we're happy to believe fairy tales every single day the second they come out the government's mouth.
Exactly.
And I think that's an interesting idea of, I'm wondering if the reason that we can't stomach fantasy anymore is because reality has become so... I don't know if postmodern is the way to say it, because it's such a disgusting perversion of the postmodern way that it should be. Of where a politician like Trump or Boris can lie and everyone will just go, oh, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, it's like...
So we want some sense of realism.
Basically.
But we can't find it in reality anymore, so why have it in our books?
Yeah. Well, see, that was the thing. Like, what was it your therapist had said? That if you work in fantasy, if you create fantasy, then you must be a pathological liar.
Yeah, and it was, I was, one of my previous therapists said, don't come back until you're willing to tell the truth, despite me telling the truth, simply because... I work in making stories, so of course I have to be a liar. And it's like, no, I try to show people a world that is better than this place. You want to see liars? Look on the TV, look on the news right now. They're everywhere.
Yeah, fiction is the lie that is full of the truth.
Yeah, and it's the best way of telling the truth. And now reality is the lie run by fiction.
I find it incredulous that someone who is as learned as that cannot grasp that sort of concept. Like, a big example of mine, and it's my favourite example because it makes me so fucking angry. Yeah. It's Angela Carter and her book Nights at the Circus. I believe you and we watched that documentary.
We did.
And she wrote a book called Nights at the Circus, and it's set in 1899. It's the fag end of the 19th century, and they're about to enter the 20th. And Sophie Fevers, is an aerial artiste. She's a trapeze artist. With one exception, she was born with wings. And so she has to pretend that these wings aren't real, so she can earn a living. And she was talking about it. The whole book centers on that question, whether the rings are real or if they're a prop. So if they're a prop, then she's a wonderful aerial artiste. If they're real, then she's a freak.
Yeah.
And it's often a question that brings up itself to quote special women. Are you more interesting because you're a freak or because you're a fraud? But then it's also a case of that book, though it centers on some great questions about like how women have to hide their true potential in a lot of ways. And in the case of Fevers herself, she's having to hide the fact that these wings are real and that she can actually fly. She can soar above us all, and she's fantastic. But it's also a case of this book. It is a whirlwind of complete delight. It is a fireworks show of fantastic stuff. And like the end of it, I absolutely adored like the last sentences, and it's literally just Fevers saying, "To think I really fooled you. Just goes to show there's nothing like confidence." And I absolutely adore it. But Angela Carter, she's also very famous for the books The Bloody Chamber, Wise Children, and stuff like that. All fantastic
very much
books.
These very empowering
basically
books.
And they empower women especially. And like in Wise Children, the main character says, "I refuse to play in tragedy." And that is such a great way to tackle life. But the Nights at the Circus, it was tipped to win the Booker Prize. It wasn't even nominated. And the book that won was Anita Bruckner's Hotel du Lac. And it's an insipid novel. It really is. It's just, and it just goes to show how the establishment, the British literary establishment, awarded women who were compliant. And because Angela Carter, she was wild, she was in your face, she was doing all these wonderful metaphorical things with language and showing these things, and she was bizarre, and I absolutely adore that bravery.
And yet
she was. I do not believe it was an omission. It was a deliberate rejection on the part of the British literary establishment, because she was not compliant, and like she was absolutely wild. And it's probably one of the best books that have ever come out of Britain. And do you know what's also the smack in the face? Is the fact that 2 days after Angela Carter died, in the February of 1992 from lung cancer, she was then being hailed as Britain's greatest contemporary writer. She was like Britain's most original voice, like the strongest voice that Britain had in literary fiction.
I hate that they wait till people are dead to admit.
Exactly.
And it's not like it takes any power away from you to tell someone when you think that they're awesome.
Exactly.
But it's an interesting. It's like you point out the with the Booker Prize. They do that in so many other art forms as well. Because like a great example is that I've been a digital artist for most of my life. I'm not very good at traditional art because the Asperger's means that I can't handle the sound of graphite.
It's very much a sort of an auditory sort of sensory thing.
So even thinking about it gets me jittery. I hate it. So I always use pens. So I started doing digital art when it started to become a thing. And I was always told, no, that's not real art. That's not real art. It's cheating. It's bad. It's not real. And yet now the NFT art has become a thing. So now that digital art is allowed to be used for money laundering, it's considered real. And it's like, oh, so wait. So Van Gogh counts as real because you can launder money using his art, but mine isn't until I'm able to code it in a way that allows you to money laundry. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Art is art, no matter what fucking way it is. Just
Yeah.
because you can, just because someone isn't compliant with your view or can't use you as a way of, scamming hundreds of thousands of people out of fucking billions, does not mean you are not an artist. If you have a voice, you're an artist.
It is literally the same in the writing community when, like, the literary establishment seem to think that certain genres, fantasy and science fiction especially, they like to think that fantasy is a dirty word.
I think that's...
It's stupid. It is the most stupid thing I've ever heard, because I know as a writer, and many other writers like me know, our work is it is of literary value because we have something to say.
Yeah, and just because you say it a different way, it's like saying that I, as a lifelong psychotic, don't see reality. That I'm incapable of it because I don't see things the same way that you or my partner see it or whatever. But I'm pretty sure that even you two see things different to each other.
I see things completely different from the way you see it. See, I can look outside and I can look up and just think of, like, through the clouds, just imagine that dragon is doing spirals and loop-de-loops up in the air. Like, when I was in Edinburgh, and Edinburgh's actually the template of my fantastical city in my fantasy world of Ale Namar. And it's literally just
Edinburgh's a good place to pick for that.
Edinburgh's amazing. It's magical, and I just thought it's like going down these steps, like into the undercity. And I thought it was like, this would be perfect for like an underground market for all the dark dwellers. So like goblins and vampires and werewolves and stuff like that. It would be great. Like, there's a community down there that, like, they can't walk up into the light because obviously
they can't.
They can't. And it's just like, no, this would be perfect because it is so magical. And it just irks me so much that you cannot be considered of being of literary value if you're not writing realism. We know that is a crock of shit because guess what? Magical realism, fabulism, won the Nobel fucking Prize with Gabriel Garcia Marquez for winning that in the 80s for 100 Years of Solitude, probably the greatest magical realism novel that I've ever read.
It's insanity. Like, again, they're expecting people to write realism, but reality has gotten so full of lies and ridiculousness, like concentration camps in China, and we're being told, oh no, they're not a thing. And China saying, oh no, they're not a thing, that's not happening.
We see it.
Yeah, we've seen the pictures. What the fuck do you mean that's not happening?
It was the same with the concentration camps in Chechnya, where they were putting queer people in, and I'm sat there just going like, what?
And yeah, like taking
like to think we would be alive to see that.
Yeah.
Like, we've only ever seen the concentration camp in black and white pictures.
Yeah,
and the starved and skeletal faces of men, women, and children behind barbed wire. That was history. And to think we're seeing that in our lives, to even conceive that is happening as we live and breathe right now, it's terrifying.
The thing that baffles me is the fact that people are happy to just disregard it because someone says it's not a thing. And that's what I don't get. Like, even with everything that Trump said or Putin says or Johnson says, like, I mean, Johnson turned around and said a few weeks ago, that there was no red bus. Like, the big bus that said the whole NHS thing with Brexit.
Yeah.
Supposedly that never existed.
Oh yeah, Nigel Farage said, oh yeah, that wasn't there. And they literally brought up a picture and said, oh, we didn't authorise that. And I'm sat there going like,
you're in front of it!
It's like, you lying bastard!
But people are happy to just let it off because it's like, oh no, I guess that's just how things were. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and yet you say that fantasy is a disgusting word. You're willing to listen to other people make up your mind for you, and yet you're not willing to open your mind to the idea that maybe down those stairs in Edinburgh that look a little dark, maybe there's, I don't know, an underground professional skating ring going on that you don't know about, or maybe a vampire bar, or maybe there's, a fae in that wood over there that's just, watching people come in and out. Why is thinking of these fabulous things that humanity, like, they recently did a thing, they found a way of figuring out how to predict if people are going to get schizophrenia based off of how ancient writers used to be. So pre-Plato and Aristotle, pretty much everyone was what we would now consider schizophrenic.
That was philosophy. Plato and Socrates, they were philosophers.
But everyone before them was pretty much psychotic because philosophy was the ability to understand and introspect. So before that, we couldn't introspect so well. So we went, oh no, this weird thing's happening because of, you know, X, Y, or Z, perdu, or whatever's going on out in the forest. And, you know, the gods and whatnot, they were all a way of us not understanding ourselves. But now we're so obsessed with understanding ourselves that we let other people tell us who we are. We let people gaslight us because we'd rather think that maybe, I don't know, maybe Mr. Overlord in charge is more right about us than we are. When honestly, I'm beginning to think it's safer to believe that there is, you know, that there is a horrific raven monster that walks around telling secrets than, you know, that we currently have the balding equivalent of Humpty Dumpty ruling the fucking country.
Yeah. You see, it's like with that sort of thing. Oh, I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
I think every train of thought's been lost this episode. After hospital, I'm on all kinds of painkillers.
Oh, it's just unreal, and it's also I've now got my train of thought back.
Yeah.
First time for everything.
Choo-choo.
But no, it's like we're also so obsessed with ourselves because the human race is the most narcissistic of species.
Oh yeah, big time.
Like we are so obsessed with ourselves and understanding ourselves that we then suddenly we're trying to explain away almost everything. Like our capacity for imagination, we try to explain that away because everything now must become logical.
And that's so sad.
I know, it's like the only thing I would ever trade growing up is the fact of I want to keep my imagination. I fought tooth and nail to keep my imagination because schools actually try to actively mentally beat imagination out of you,
and society does it
society
too.
does it as well. It's not until you are successful
that it's
okay. Like big examples, J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, and it's disgusting in my opinion that you're not allowed to have an imagination because it's wrong until, you know, you're older kind of thing. And I think that's really bad because I mean I struggle with it still day to day, and I'm pretty sure that every artist struggles with it. The unfortunate feeling of shame for wanting to see the world in a more fantastic light. Like I feel like so many people feel that kind of shame because it's not productive. It doesn't fit in with the cogs of society, and it's like honestly nothing fits in with the cogs of society today.
It's like right now, like when I was like proper fatigued, I felt so ashamed of the stuff that I was doing because like I felt ashamed for this very folkloric connection I have to my country. Scotland is a beautiful country. It's rich in folklore, it's rich in fairy tale, it's rich in mythology, and I'm sat there just going like, this is what I want to work with because this country does mean a lot to me. And I just felt like I was completely thrown off my groove, my writing groove, because it was just sat there going like, what's the point? And I'm sat there just going like, well no, there is a point to it because anyone, even if it's just an audience of one, if they are affected by it, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter the size of your audience as long as they feel hopeful, enlightened. If they enjoy it, then the work is good.
Yeah, and that's the main thing is like that's our job as creators, whether it's doing this podcast and speaking about, you know, the pain that is reality, or whether it's creating fiction in a movie or art or writing or music of any kind, and that we're excuse me, like it's our job to allow people the chance to escape or feel vindicated or feel understood. And if we have to create a world that doesn't exist to help you feel understood,
We'll do it.
yeah, that's how we survive.
That's our job.
Yeah. And we feel like no one should ever feel ashamed for having to live in a slightly different world to everyone else. Because, I mean, that's what makes things so amazing sometimes, is people that see things differently. And it's, like, I feel like with your writing, it is amazing. Like, I loved your book of short stories. I still need to get it back. I still need to get it up on the shelf because my order is coming into Waterstones.
Excellent. I was actually going to bring my author's copy because I was actually going like, well, if you ever wanted to try doing some animations of the stories, like even short ones, like for the last story, the Sleeping Beauty story, that would have been amazing.
My aim is now that because this podcast is under consideration of going under a production umbrella, if it keeps going. Yep. So I may end up directing, or one of the directors in that may end up we'll all sit down and actually animate a few stories together because I want it up on the page.
That is fantastic. That's really great. And the book I'm working on right now, it's another fairy tale.
Yeah.
And it's a gender bent queer version of Red Riding Hood with Snow White. The provisional title right now, or the final title, is The Malice in the Mirror.
Ooh, I like.
Aye. I'm going queer, I'm going dark, I'm going very gothic,
Good.
as is my want when it comes to stuff like this. But then after that, it's this fantasy that I've been working on. I've had this world in my head for 13 years now.
Yeah.
And I have tried every which way to try and get it down on paper. There's probably been about 35 different drafts of the first book.
Yeah.
I'm sat there going none of it actually feels right, but I have the story right now, which I'm very proud of, and I'm wanting to get it down. I'm writing the plans for it right now, and I'm sat there just going yes, please get in there.
See, an interesting thing that I've been curious about for the last few days, weeks, I don't know. Either way, because I've been watching a series called Skate the Infinite, which I'm not into sports anime and cartoons a lot because I'm not into sports. Mm-hmm. But this one was interesting because it was about skating and it was kind of being fabulous and that, and it was literally just skating, but they made it interesting and they made it in a way fantastic and fantasy and that, despite it still being there's no super beasts or whatever, or that it's not when you go back to the days of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Beyblade.
Yeah.
It's just skating.
It's skating, but it's innovative.
It's done
been
interestingly.
changed.
Yeah. And I have always it came back to me, and it's that moment of actually I wonder, what do athletes see or think when they're competing?
It's do they see strategy? Do they see themselves going forward? Do they see
do they see what we see in my case with football? What I see is just a bunch of men running around kicking a ball back and forth. I don't see a battle for your pride. I don't see a ticket of kind of that this is everything I am, every kick has my hopes and dreams or whatever. I just see some people getting paid to kick a ball. But I'm curious about if the athletes, what do they see? What do they feel? What goes through their head?
Yeah, see, the things that I see, in skating, the figure skating with the music, oh my God, it's gorgeous. I see beauty. I see years of dedication. I see years of training. And the same with diving.
Yeah.
And it's not just because it's the men in the skimpy trunks, even though that is a bonus, but
Definitely
it's
helps.
the skill. Yeah, Tom Daly, yummy. But it's also a case of the skill they put in, the dedication, and the artistry of when they do it. Every move is planned, every move is considered, and how it's perfect. And the fact that they have to dive and just create the littlest splash possible, I find that fantastic. It's how do they plan this? How do they do this?
Athletically speaking, it's beautiful, but I'm curious as to what goes, because again, it's like I was saying, no one should be afraid to live in their own little world a little bit.
No.
And I'm always curious as to if athletes do in that moment, take Tom Daly with his diving, in that moment when he is about to dive, is he thinking, I must get my toes on the edge, I must now do this, my next step is this? Does he go through it sequentially like a robot? Or when he's in the air, does he just that
It's
feeling,
let the body go through the motions.
that feeling, but not even go through the motions, when you're writing and when you hit that moment and you just, something clicks and you just feel alive while you're writing. I want to know what is that with athletes, because with me when I'm writing and animating, it's when I see something and it clicks and it's as if I'm no longer in this world. I am in this fantasy world that I have.
You're engrossed.
And I'm seeing it come to life, and I'm watching this, and I'm feeling the emotions that you're meant to feel. And I'm sure it's the same with you when you're writing your characters.
Definitely, when I write, when I get into the real groove of it, when I know it's good, I am away. I'm stuck in the Black Forest of Germany, talking to the big bad wolf,
and
or I've been captured by goblins that are just why are you here, da, 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 da. Or there's a Wendigo coming through the trees, it's just hanging there, and you feel the fear. If you're not feeling as you're creating the audience aren't going to feel
And
either.
I know that a lot of creatives get into that as the only way I can explain it is zone.
Yeah, we have to, because if you're not living it, if you're not feeling it, then
it's not the same.
It's very stilted. It's artificial.
So I want to know if athletes have the same kind of fantasy zone where they get into that headspace of where we get in, and like some writers and that, and even me as a director,
quite possibly.
when I'm there tweaking a scene in that, and I'm coming up with the script or something, I've got myself crying in scenes in that, like while writing them.
Oh gosh, yeah. Like a couple of days ago, for my Titanic novel, it's a detective story. Like, I've always written out of sequence. I've never written a novel linearly.
Yeah, you kind of do here.
Yeah,
there.
I
Same with the series and me.
I write it like I'm shooting a film.
Yeah.
And there was a scene. It was the final plunge. And it was all these characters who are still left on board the ship. And I'm sat there just watching it. I'm engrossed. And I didn't even feel like I was typing. I was just watching this whole thing. Like, it was a view from the boats. And I'm just watching this dark shape with the lights still on, but the lights are going down. And as it rises up, and then the lights just fizzle out.
Yeah.
And then all you hear is this terrible roar. And the ship just breaks in half, and it's just like it's impossible. It feels real.
Yeah.
And when I was finished and I put the last full stop on that sequence, I just had tears running down my cheeks, and it was more the case of I went through the motions of life after I wrote that. I was like an automaton. Like, I was just like, I went down the stairs. Thank God I was alone, because I burst into tears like an hour later, just going like, Christ, what have I just seen? It's insane, but that's how it works.
And that's the beauty of it, is that we can go through, our body can do the motions of taking the notes of what we're seeing in that, but when we're doing it and we're seeing it and we're living it, and like when artists are doing their paintings and living it, or when anything kind of thing, when role players in a role-playing game are really in character and really feel for a death or something, it's such, that fantasy is such a unique feeling, because I don't know, it lets you feel like, especially as guys, like, I don't know if you got this, but I mean, growing up, I always got the whole, no, you're a guy, you don't, emotions are bad, I
got that,
all that bullshit. So like, fantasy is an area that you can go where that doesn't matter, where feeling is okay, and you can experience and you can live. And I'm curious as to if athletes, because again, sports are a very real thing. We see them happen. It's not like fighting a dragon where it is in your head kind of thing.
See, for me,
I want to know if they feel like they're in fantasy.
Definitely. But like, as you were saying, like, oh no, you're a guy, like feelings and stuff like that. But like, as someone born male and as a writer, a lot of the older generation, especially men, told me what I should be writing, how I should write it, and stuff like that. I started to ignore them, but they kept on going. And then I started answering back. And I started answering back and pissing them off.
That's when it gets
terribly. Because I started writing from a female perspective, and I actually find that I write more strongly from a female point of view, which is weird in itself. But then I put that down to my gender fluidity, because I'm able to write from any point of view. Yeah,
it's we connect with certain characters easier than others. I connect with the bad guy almost frequently more than I connect with whatever hero I'm writing.
Basically, see, I think it was because I completely blame Daphne du Maurier for this. It's when I read Rebecca, and I'm sat there just going like, the narrator, the unnamed narrator, the second Mrs. De Winter, she was me. And I felt that like she was timid, she was shy, like she was nervous and she was awkward. And I'm sat there going like, why is that me? And it was also, it's a great challenge to write from a perspective that is not your own.
Exactly. And on the note of Rebecca, fuck you, Broadway. Why couldn't that come to English?
I was so angry. Like Germany, Korea, all the other places that are doing Rebecca the musical, thank you. You are amazing.
I'm so
Broadway,
glad I know German.
I hate you.
I'm so glad I know German.
Same. Yeah, you never know. Next time I do a drag act, I might actually do that in full German.
Please.
Not just lip syncing, actually singing
it. You're a good singer. So.
Thank you.
But on that note, that's about our hour mark. So shall we closing notes?
Let us. Yeah. And as always, the message is always the same at the end. Look after yourselves. yourselves, look after everyone else, wear your damn mask, wash your hands, look after each other, support your theatre, support your artists.
And do art.
And do art. Create, for goodness sake.
Create worlds. That's...
yeah, basically. Like, when the night closes in, the stars come out.
Yeah, and that's... At the moment, the whole world is in darkness.
Basically,
so
we need
those stars.
We need those stars. Like any form of creation, we need it. And please do feel free to share. Like, tell your stories in the comments below.
Yeah, it also occurred to me that when we set our little homework and that yeah, you can't put links in the YouTube comments.
No, you can't. That's very
sucks.
upsetting.
So, yeah, we've noticed that, we didn't manage to actually get any from the people that did want to. Where would probably be the best place to send any art that they want to send or any stories that they want us to get out there?
I have absolutely no idea. Actually, do you think actually we should make an Instagram, just like us, make an Instagram for both of us?
Might be a good plan.
That would be a very good idea.
Yeah, if anyone in the comments, if you think that it would be worth us making an Instagram and like sharing set selfies or whatever,
like an Instagram or a Tumblr, not a Tumblr, a Twitter or something like that.
Yeah, just something so that you can get in contact. Maybe a Reddit, like just if
Reddit, or even like a page on Facebook.
Yeah, like I mean, but yeah, if you want to, get in touch with us, do say, and we'll make a contact.
We will make content.
Yes, all of the content.
All of the content.
But yeah, until then, check out. We should now be at this point have our playlist up actually on the YouTube video that you can click on if you haven't listened to any other episodes, and this wonderfully meandering myriad of manicness has piqued your interest.
Indeed. And so on the last note, I shall repeat what I said last time, that from these garish lights we vanish now forevermore, until we meet again, but with a grateful, respectful, affectionate farewell.